Okay, do not mind this madness. Nothing is open here at this hotel, so I am like remote, setting up an office in our rental car. So, thank you for being here. We're gonna dive right in. Hey, welcome to the Death of a Dream. We are on location in the beautiful rolling hills of South Dakota. I bet you are so excited to be here. If you want to follow along on that journey, I am posting a lot of the things that we are visiting out here. You can follow me on Instagram at Hannah Nuss. You can find me there and you can kind of go along this journey with us as we venture through South Dakota. So, don't mind me. My YouTube recording of this is about to be crazy. This is the worst lighting that I've ever had for my YouTube live podcast recording, but nothing is open right now. There are no offices, there's nothing, and it doesn't matter, right? You can do this work anywhere. And so I am coming to you live from the rental car. Yeah. Setting up an office right here, connecting to some free Wi-Fi, and bringing this episode to you. I love traveling. I love it. I think it's just such a gift. I love seeing different people and different environments, and I love meeting people and just like wondering all the while if they decided that this is what they wanted for their life or they just ended up placed here. And I love seeing new people and how they take the world in and how different parts of this country, different parts of the world means that you just know different things. I think that is the most amazing thing on this planet. I'm just constantly like looking at people in lines and in places and just wondering what their story is. And I just love that everybody has their own individual story and gift to bring to this world, and I think that's such an amazing thing. So my great thing really is just being here, being present, being the person that I know that I'm supposed to be. I don't know, and I'm going to dive into that deeper because that obviously is a heavy thing, and especially after the craziness that I brought to you all yesterday, you're probably thinking, holy cow, we have gone to a new level. I promise you that the deepness of these thoughts aren't for this to be super deep all the time, but are to continue challenging you to show up, to live life on your terms. Because I don't know that I ever would have questioned it. I don't know that I ever would have said, hold, wait, this doesn't feel right. And that conflict was so constant in my life, and it left me so snarky and so angry and so resentful towards everyone that it got hard to even recognize myself when she was allowed to show up. I had just buried her so deep. And so, this trip really is the first time that I've kind of ventured out as this new person, and so it's kind of a constant reminder to like release myself and allow myself to be free and allow myself to be that person. And I think that's such a hard balance. And I think even harder than that is showing up to find yourself even when you aren't all that lost. And I was seriously lost, but I don't think that in that moment, as I was going through it, I felt like that's who I was supposed to be. And now that I've found this person, that I've found this, whoa, we dropped our computer. Okay, sorry, YouTube. Now that I found this, now I know that wasn't who I actually was supposed to be. Right? That person lived in so much fear and so much anxiety and anger that isn't how I'm supposed to show up in this world, and that it's okay for me to show up light and airy and blowing sunshine up everybody, because there's not enough. And you can sit here and you can say that that's not going to help anybody grow, but I don't believe it. I don't. I've seen it grow too many people. I've seen people who need light. I've seen people who all they need is one person to tell them how amazing they are, and everything could change. And yet we hold it back because people should have to go through the hard. People should have to struggle. People need to grow grit. But you can grow grit through love too. You can grow grit through support too. Hard times are going to happen regardless, but you don't need two hills to climb at the same time. Right? I will always commit to being the sunshine. That is who I am. And I think for a long time I wasn't. And I don't want to be that anymore. That wasn't me, and that made me show up so different in this world. That struggle right there. The inability to find value in being the light. So, my great thing is just being. Just being right here. Just being and feeling myself. And that's such a beautiful gift, considering how far from that I was even just a year ago. Right? So, that's my great thing. Go ahead and take time today to recognize yourself for the great thing. And that really is taking time to ground yourself in your greatness every single day. It's so vital, because that's going to start to shift the belief that you are good or even bad, because I think a lot of times that's where we naturally go, in this bad instance. Like, I'm no good. I have nothing to bring to this world. You do. We aren't going there. We aren't questioning that anymore. You are so good. You're so beautifully made. Everything about you is amazing. You realize that, right? There is no one else like you at all that has the same story, that has the same background. That's what's so fascinating about people. It's like, you could be you could have similar demeanor, you could have a similar approach to the world, you could have all those things, but you could be in like 3 different states. You could be 3 states away from one another and have a completely different approach to the world. Does that amaze anyone else? My mind is so blown by that all the time. Constantly blown by that idea. It's so crazy to me. So crazy. Sorry, but more importantly than that, you have to recognize yourself. You have to start recognizing how amazing you are, because the world can't shift with you if we're stuck here in this mindset that you aren't a gift. The world won't shift with you. It can't. It can't do it. It can't help you if you aren't willing to help yourself. You have to be willing to take that stand for yourself. Oh, I think I just kind of started this car. Sorry for the extra beeps. Okay, here we go. I had to get lights back. You have to take a stand. You have to be this person. You have to start believing in yourself and your greatness. And that's what this practice is going to do. Take time today and every day. It's going to take you 5 seconds. Stop, reflect, pull from yourself that greatness, and watch as your mindset starts shifting, as you start looking for the great things instead of the bad ones all the time. That's all we're doing, right? When we start practicing that habit, that's what we're doing. We're forcing you to find good. And in a world where we are naturally adapt to find and look for the bad, we need to shift. And that's what this greatness grounding is going to do for you. Start committing to it. You can do it. You're here. You're right here. The world is yours if we start to shift that mindset, if we start to take you here. Right? Simple. Just do it. Just do it. I dare you. I dare you. Double dog dare you. Okay. This is madness. I really appreciate you hanging in here as I make my makeshift office. It's wonderful. So, let's go ahead and dive in, right? I know yesterday was heavy, and today will likely be heavy, and honestly, every day is heavy, right? We are talking about changing our lives, living life on our terms. And if you are steps away from that, if you are miles away from that, if you are lifetimes away from that, years and months, it's got to be kind of heavy, right? We have to go there. Because my hope is that you can feel yourself in what I'm talking about. Find yourself somewhere. Not every single day is going to be similar to your story, but hopefully something hits along the way somewhere and it can rescue you from some part, right? And I've kind of gotten obsessed with this kind of middle class mindset, and I think, so many of my people who have reached out, who have listened, who have felt what I'm talking about, so many people who reach out talk about this idea of settling for fine, right? And that to me feels so much a part of my upbringing, so much a part of the constant narrative that I was surrounded by growing up. And so as I'm writing queries for my book and I'm starting to kind of finalize the manuscript of the book version of The Death of a Dream, that's what I feel this book is. It's like a how-to manual of how I kind of rescued myself from that middle-class mindset, from that fineness that we were told to strive for. And I grew up in small-town, middle-class America. And I wrote about this the other day in my blog, but I think there was always this constant story being told of like the one person that got out. And everybody talks about that one person, right? Like that one guy who works with Beyonce, or that one guy who went and played football, who likely came back home and is now just coaching the high school team. But like they made it, right? And we idolize that person forever. They came back because they didn't really, but we idolize them. This is a very, very consistent narrative from where I'm from. And so that's what this is about. It's about being that voice for those people, because I'm sure it's out there. There's so many books, there's so many things, but to me, I never heard anybody saying it this way. Right? I just kept hearing like, no, you can do this. Yes, you're good enough. You can rescue yourself. You can. But I never had an example of anybody who had actually done it. Right? And all of those people who were doing it just came from such drastic backgrounds from the one that I came from that it was like, well, yeah, you did it. You didn't grow up your whole life hearing that you couldn't. You didn't grow up your whole life having no one to look up to in this space. Of course you did it. Right? And a lot of that was just my spiteful anger. Right? And that's what most of it was. But so much of that is truth. There aren't enough people that come out of middle class America, and I think it's because, and I can say this from what I've experienced, just kind of relieving myself of that mindset, is that it's so much easier to just blend in. It's so much easier to not question it. It's so much easier to just go along because, like I said, everything would be just fine. Nobody would notice. In fact, it's like the exact opposite. Now people notice what I'm doing. Now people are very nervous and take offense almost to this movement, to this idea that I would do this, that I would even have the audacity to think that I could. And that is where you lose it. That's what I want to write about. That's the story that I want to start changing. For little girls who grow up in a small town who don't see themselves anywhere that they look around, who want to be dancers on big stages but can only dance on the broken stage at the city hall. You know, like, I don't want you to have to settle. And I know that's what I was doing. And this trip right now is just so obviously perfectly timed because, you know, it is. Okay, so last year we went to Oregon. It was in May. May would have been when I was recording my podcast every day, but not publishing. And we went on this trip to Oregon, and it was beautiful. But every time that I got out of the vehicle, I would feel so nervous because those mountains are so high, and Jordan was just driving like a bat out of hell, like a crazy man. Like, he loves driving hills and crazy terrain, and he was just like zipping around, and I was like, this makes me too anxious. I could never live here. This is terrible. This is, oh my gosh, I can't even breathe. I don't want to drive through the mountains. That's the scariest thing ever. But like, I love adventure. I love changing environments. I love that idea. But I think this is where I think the shift in my life has happened now. So we're on this trip, and yesterday we went out and we visited the Badlands. And we went out and we looked at the things. And last year, when we were in Oregon, I couldn't even look over the mountains. Made me sick to my stomach, couldn't even think. And I think there was this like, we're going to get dramatic again. I'm sorry. But I mean, the title of this podcast is The Death of a Dream. So it was bound to be dramatic at some point. Okay. Sorry, not sorry. So there was this constant fear of dying. And like I told you yesterday, there were thoughts of dying, of like, oh, this is all just too crazy. This doesn't feel right. And I don't know how to rescue myself from this. And so there's got to be an easier route, right? There's got to be something that we can do here. And I constantly went into those places where it's just like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know. But when I was out in Oregon, I remember the pits of my stomach looking over some of those ranges, fearing for my life. And I didn't feel that yesterday walking out onto some of those badlands, walking out onto some of those ridges and bluffs. And not even a year ago, I couldn't even look over. Right? And I still have anxiety about my kids just running around freely and willy-nilly, but I don't fear for my life anymore because I'm actually living it. Because this is who I'm supposed to be. And if I would go tomorrow, I know that I've done the work in my heart. And I think the constant fear of dying, the constant protection of my own life, the anxiety that I would have anytime that I did something risky or adventurous wasn't because I'm not those things. In fact, I very much am. It was because I was scared of losing my life before I had lived it. Right? I love adventure. I love change. You've heard that. You hear that in this. I love that more than anything. And yesterday, when I was out, I still have to be conscious of kind of coaching myself into experimenting with it and going, but I did not feel any of the anxiety that I did in Oregon at all. In fact, it was like this new becoming of a person. I bought a pair of Keens. I'm like adventurous. I'm trying things. I'm climbing hills. I'm like living my life, right? But I wasn't ever going to allow myself to live that because there was always this burden of not wanting to lose my life before I had lived it. And yesterday when I talked about like, why do you act like you're running out of time? Because you are. But if you're doing that work in your heart, all of a sudden you start to free up this anxiety that could be holding you back from being the very person that you're supposed to be. Like, I know I want a vacation and I want to explore and I want to look over mountain ranges and I want to see the beauty that this world has to offer. I know that, right? But I never let myself experience those things fully because of this fear that I might lose it before I find it. And I don't fear that anymore. And I don't know. We'll see. We have more mountain ranges to see while we're here, and so we'll see if I have that anxiety come up like I did in Oregon. You know, because maybe it's just a height thing, but yesterday I felt myself there. I felt myself so fully present in those spaces. It was amazing. because I wasn't that last year. And I have to wonder if it is this release of self, this release of, I'm not afraid. Here's my legacy. You're listening to it. If I go today, here's the good that I want to put into this world. It exists. I am someone. I am something. I am about something. This is and will forever be my legacy. I'm not living scared of what might happen because it's happening right now. I'm actually in it. Instead of looking 10 steps ahead of me, hoping that I'll be in it soon, constantly. That was my constant state. Oh, I hope I get there. Oh, I bet you I'm going to get that thing. But I wasn't ever right here, right where I was at. I was always over there. In fact, I was over there. I was over here. I was 10 steps ahead that way. But I was never where I was at. And I don't know if anybody would have noticed. Definitely nobody was going to call me out on it. Because I was successful. You just know not to question it, right? Oh, she must be happy. She must be fine. Don't question it. Just let her do her. Man, she's killing it, right? She's killing it. Dang. Wish I could be Hannah. No, please don't wish that. But I wasn't. I wasn't me. I wasn't really me. That was scared me. That was like hustle myself to death and every single person around me until we're so stressed out and high strung that we can't even think straight. That was me screaming at my kids every morning. That was me forcing everyone to level up to this level and operate at such a high octane pace that they couldn't even think. And anybody who wasn't on that level just needed to go away. They didn't get it. We shouldn't rest. We shouldn't relax. We shouldn't give ourselves this freedom. We'll get lazy. But it's not about that. It's not about grinding so hard that you can't sleep, right? It's about passion. It's about the merriment of the two. When you feel passionate, when you feel like you could wake up and do this all the time, you don't have to hustle yourself to death. You know, I think I was so unaligned with my life and where I wanted to go that I was fighting because nothing was fitting. And so it was like, okay, well, it doesn't feel quite right, but maybe that's because I haven't gotten there yet. Maybe that's because I'm not good enough yet. Maybe that's because, and so I would just hustle and push and move and work as hard as I could to get all the way up there as fast as I could to level up, to get that next job, to get that promotion, to move, because maybe once I got there, maybe once I was at the highest level of success, maybe then it would feel right. Maybe then I would find myself. But as someone who did, it's not going to be enough. It's not the thing, right? When you find the work of your heart, when you start doing it, everything else aligns. In fact, your whole life starts to unfold in front of you. And so that's what I want this to be about. I want it to be about a discovery of yourself and the becoming of the person that you're meant to be. And I want that so much for your life. And that's what we're doing here, right? We're living life on your terms. Every day. What do you envision it looking like? What do you want? Because those questions weren't asked of me. And when they were, when I gave the real answer people talked me out of that version. And I don't want that for us anymore. I want more. I want beauty. I want the gifts, right? As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? Change the world. We done with our car episode.